Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to episode 22 of Sipping Tea with Stacey T. I know, 22 episodes. Can you believe it? I'm really excited that you decided to join me this afternoon. I am Stacey. If you haven't met me before, welcome. Hello, everyone. Hello. Hey, Tiffany. Welcome. Hope you're having a good Saturday morning thus far. Today good afternoon. I am actually trying a new brand. So I was looking online to try to find some new teas. I've been kind of having the same type of teas that I've had before. And Char Brew was new for me. I had never tried that before. But today's tea is from a tea company called Revolution. I've never heard of it before. This is it. So today we're having Spanish white peach and ginger tea. And I love peach tea, as you know. I love ginger, so we're gonna see what that one's like. So again, it is Revolution. Have you tried this one before? Have you heard of this one before? So yeah, I'm curious. We shall see what it tastes like. I'm gonna smell it first. And I like how it's in the little satchel. Oh, it smells so good. Okay, now I'm excited. I'm actually really excited. I know, I love the packaging too. I'm really excited because of the smell of it alone. Oh yeah, I'm excited for that. So we're gonna try that out this morning. Right? It is very, very descriptive. So let's see. I'm gonna steep the tea. Add that hot water. See what happens. Ooh, and like a genius, I dropped the the tag in. So I've retrieved that. Oh goodness. All right. Oh, positive peach tea for you. Is that something you normally have? The positive? Hello, Kathy. Hey, Cheryl. Welcome. So for those of you who just joined, I'm trying a brand I've never tried before. It is Revolution. And it is Spanish white peach and ginger. And Tiffany was here with me as I did the smell test. And it smells, it smells so good. And it's already really dark. And I just put it in. Oh, it's a Yogi brand? Gotcha. Yeah, I've heard of, they have a lot of different things for like energy and sleeping and all that good jazz. Yeah, they do a lot of that. I think that's kind of their brand, so to speak. So before I get started, a couple of quick things that I want to shout out before I try this tea that I'm very excited to try. Many of you may have seen my post about a lovely gift that I received, and I just want to show you guys, for those of you who may have not seen it. So it was really lovely because, again, when you're doing things, you may not know the impact. And this is a box set that has a pen in it, and it says the hand that holds the pen writes history, and it has my name on it. And so and then the pen also has my name on it. So I was really grateful for that, because again, and I said this on the message that I had stated, that it is beautiful. It was very, very beautiful. You just don't know sometimes if you're having impact on anyone or if people support what you're doing. And I have had other things. My mom bought me the chair I'm sitting in. So that was, lovely. And my sister has, had things for me, some of the mugs that I've been using, so on and so forth. And they support me every week. So it's just nice. But, to have somebody do this is so special. And so I just wanted to thank you for that, because it does mean a lot. So if you didn't see the post, now you're seeing that in action. I also wanted to let you guys know I am writing. So for those of you who are worried about me writing, this is the actual writing. I did it quick because I don't want you guys, taking what I wrote. But these are the pages and pages and pages that I've written. And I know people are probably thinking, why did you not just type it? Even when I wrote my plays, I always handwrote them first. Always. I don't know why that is, but there's something about the connection of me actually taking pen to paper. So that's why for me, like, this pen is fantastic because, I'm able to do that. And it's also interesting because I have these Tabitha Brown pens. Not sure if you have ever seen them before, but the one that I started writing with says "get into it," right? And that was for me important. Like, I want to get into it, get into like the meat of writing, get into what I'm trying to get across through the book. Which, again, for me, this whole process, for those of you who are joining for the first time, we're on episode 22, but up until episode 20, those are going to be the episodes that are the chapters of the book that I'm going to be writing. And I didn't know that when I started this journey, it was really going to be a healing journey. And I think it's been a healing journey for myself and many people that have, I even had somebody reach out to me this week and say, I'm not a Christian, but I want to thank you for making me look at myself, and the things, the nuggets that I've been able to take from what you've said have been really helpful. And so to me, that was another, again, honor. So I feel like God is just leaving me these little nuggets along the way, these little points of encouragement that are so helpful. And I don't want you to think that I take it for granted. For those of you especially that have been with me every single solitary week that I've been doing this, it means the world to me. So thank you, and thank you. And then the last thing before I get started with my tea that is really dark right now, is, I don't know if you guys saw my post. So when I advertise a lot of the different things that I do, I talk about the teas that I drink, and when I make my posts weekly, I often, tag the names of companies, and I give them, credit and so on and so forth, just because I'm trying to build relationships. Well, I did that this week, and Arizona Iced Tea responded. So it's just great to get out there, and for companies to now be acknowledging some of the work that I've been doing, and I know that it's going to grow from here. So that was another very exciting a touch point this week. So I had a lot of fantastic touch points this week, and so yeah, I'm grateful. I feel very blessed, and now we're gonna drink some tea. We're gonna sip some tea. So again, I think everybody's been in here. This is a new tea for me. Let's see what it tastes like. This is really super hot, so I don't know how much I'm gonna be able to sip, but let's see. It actually tastes really good. Like I was trying to figure out which one was going to overpower each other. Yes, Arizona, exactly. Arizona iced tea. I was very excited. They told me to drink Arizona because the post said which one, are any of these teas your favorite? And I had Twining tea tagged in it. I had Char Brew, and then I had Arizona. No, I had Snapple and Arizona. So I had all of those connected or tagged in the post. And Arizona told me, of course, they said, yes, we love Arizona iced tea, or Arizona tea. So they encouraged me to, to drink more. I'm hoping they start thinking relationship. So that's what I'm working towards. So yeah, this tea, I already recommend. This is what I just had, Spanish white peach and ginger. I didn't know which one was gonna kind of overpower the other. It's weird because initially, well, first of all, the smell of the peach is really powerful. The ginger is like an added note after, and I feel like I'm tasting more, like I'm tasting the ginger as the time is going on, if that makes any sense. But that initial smell and taste was absolutely the white peach, and I love that. So loving that. I have to figure out if they have other stuff, and I will be tagging them in today's posts and seeing what they have to say. So, all right. So, hello, welcome. We're in episode 22, and today's episode was another one that, you know, in talking to, you know, my family, I'm often like, you know, hey, do you have any more ideas for topics? And again, my mom came through. She's doing it. She gave me another one today. So I'm going to have to, you know, start, you know, giving her more props on this. But she came up with a topic, and I had to sit with it for a while. And I mean, she gave it to me a long while ago. She gave me a whole list of topics, some which I was like, okay, that makes sense for me, and some that don't. And I think you guys have heard this before, but any topics that people bring to me, they have to be relative to me. Like, they have to make sense to me. They have to be something I feel like, you know, I can talk about comfortably. And so this one on Satin, Stain, and Saint, the first one she gave it to me, I was like, okay, yeah, great, it's the same letters. I was like, okay, great, Mom, what is it that you're, and then so I sat with it. And even this week I was like, you know, that topic that you gave to me, was that based on blah blah blah? And she said, yeah, that's what I had in mind. So sitting with something sometimes is what you need in order to really look at it and be able to, you know, take stock in it. So this particular topic is really interesting in that when you look at the words, obviously you're able to see that they're the same letters in all three words, Saint, Stain, and Satin, right? But the meaning is entirely changed by just changing the letters, right? So that means one shift, one minor thing being moved around can change the entire definition. And I think that that is really an accurate depiction. And I can't even say that, you know, one minor thing. I feel like I've had lots of major things, but there have been minor things that have also changed the trajectory of my life, have changed how I thought about myself, have changed decisions that I've made. And I think that that's really true of many of us. How many of us, just looking back before I get into, you know, the typical way that I do my sipping tea, how many of you feel, looking back on your life, that there were some things, if you had just made a little bit of a different choice, things would be so entirely different? Like your entire life might be different if you made maybe one tiny choice differently. So as you do that, I'm going to add some sweetener to this just to see the difference in the flavor, see how it, you know, impacts it. We shall see. But this is one of those things that I wouldn't even, if you're a huge, you know, sugar person, I wouldn't even add a ton of sugar. The flavor of this tea, I love it. Like, love. And that's not something I say easily about tea. You guys have seen me try lots of teas, and I'm like, no thank you. Not it. Not interested. But this one, very different. So, repeat the questions? Absolutely. So do you feel like, looking back on your life, because I was talking about how the words, this particular topic or episode is called Satin, Stain, and Saint, right? And they're all the same with one letter moved, right? All the letters are the exact same in all three words. Do you feel like in your life there was something that if you had made one decision, just one small decision differently, it would have changed your entire life, how your life is right now? Yep. So this tea, yeah, you're saying yes. This tea, by the way, gets so dark. Like, I'm hoping I can show you. No, let's go this way. This is like dark. It almost looks like coffee. That's how dark it is. Definitely. And this is the thing, I mean, I think if people are honest, everybody is going to say yes. You know, there are some people like, oh, I would never change a thing about my life. And I'm not saying you would change what happened in your life, because your life is what it is, right? But I think that if we look back, that everybody would say, man, if I had just made this one decision differently, right? This is, it like literally is, I mean, I wish I could show you better. I don't want to take the the thing off the stand, but it is so dark. So I will say, initially I was like, you may not need any sweetener. It is, because it's gonna start getting bitter in a second. So that is something that you may decide, maybe I do need to sweeten it up a bit. But I think that going back to, making different choices, I think everybody looks, excuse me, something flew in my face. I think that anything or anybody would say, you know what, if I had made a little bit of a different choice, if I had, made a little adjustment on the choice, it wouldn't even be maybe making an entirely different choice or changing everything, but it would be saying, you know what, if I had done this a little bit differently, or maybe if I had, thought about something a little bit more, or, all those types of things impact the life that we're living now, right? And I'm going to talk about some of those touch points for me, but also when you look at your relationships, right? A lot of those things happen for varied reasons, right? A lot of the relationships, we have friendships that last for a long time that maybe should have been cut shorter, or, romantic relationships, same thing. Oftentimes, if we look back, we're now able to say, man, if we had made a little bit of a different choice, a little bit of a different decision, then things might be different than they are now. Okay? So, let's go back in time. Let's go back to young Stacy. So, young Stacy, it was interesting because I've said this multiple times, was a tomboy, but also had that dichotomy of really liking, playing in make-believe and being creative in my mind, right? So I could be out there playing in the dirt, but also making mud pies, right? Like that was like kind of the breakdown of how I was and how I thought. But also, yes, if I didn't go to college, life would be different. Yeah, that is absolutely 100% the truth. For many people, yeah, that decision, making that different decision to go or not to go, could absolutely impact lots. That's 100% the truth. So, going back into young Stacy, like I said, there was and I think for a lot of people, there's multiple sides to you. You're not like you're not one thing. You're not any one thing. People say a monolith, right? There's lots of different pieces of you, lots of different ways you think about the world, show up in the world, that make you uniquely you. However, just looking back on that, and obviously you don't have the perspective when you're living your life. Oftentimes the life changes that you would make are only because you have separation from it. Because right now I just asked you that question, you're able to look back on your life and say, man, if I had done this differently, then XYZ would have happened, or I wouldn't have this stress, or I wouldn't have, I wouldn't be living where I am, or I wouldn't have had this heartbreak, or whatever it is, right? You're able to say that now because you're separated from it. So obviously going back and talking about Stacy as a kid, I'm able to see things from a different vantage point because I'm no longer a child. So when I look back on, that part of my life, and in true honesty, I really, really enjoy everything creative, right? I truly enjoy the arts. I truly enjoy music, like very richly enjoy those things. And I feel like they're a huge component of how I see the world and how I think is through that lens. But I really, didn't give it enough time to mature, right? I didn't give it enough time to do those things because, and it's funny, as I write the book, I'm really unpacking a lot of this, and I was actually not realizing that in writing one of the chapters that I was going to be talking about some of the things that I'm going to be talking about today, which are, looking back, I made choices because I felt like they were already pre-made for me in some retrospect. I think a lot of us had, family that might have had very clear opinions about who we were going to be, how we were going to show up in the world, and that's not a bad thing. I think that, kids need some type of guidance or else they're just floundering through the world. But I think, unfortunately, what happens is, depending on how you process information and depending on how it's delivered to you, sometimes that cuts off your ability to think for yourself, dream for yourself. And that was very much, looking back now, that was very much the case for me, I, looked at basically things that people were saying as, this is what I have to do. This is the decision that is made for me. And as a child, you don't really have, well, in my house, and I'm sure many of your houses, you don't have the ability to say, oh, I'm not going to do that. Like, that wasn't a thing. It is a thing now in households, but it was not a thing for us. We definitely were told to do something, and that was what was going to be. And I feel like even in deciding, like, moving into middle school, like the things that I did, the decisions that I made weren't really my own. I didn't recognize it then, but a lot of it was shaped by, I had an older sister, or I have an older sister, who, a lot of the things that she did, I just did because I felt like she had already, not necessarily blazed the trail, but had already set the tone for how things were going to go. And I've told you this before, I took French. Like, in retrospect, I would never take that language, right? And it's not because I don't think the language is beautiful, but I wish I had taken Spanish, because the practicality of Spanish and my ability to, have conversation with so many more people that I would interact with on a daily basis would have been helpful. But I made the decisions based on what I had seen laid out before me. And I think oftentimes, in situations that we all grew up in, and again, all of our situations were varied, right? But in the situations we grew up in, you really hold on to or latch onto what's already set out before you. So it's not, and you guys can all correct me if I'm wrong. If you felt like you had the ability to, like, do anything, be anything, go anywhere, if you felt like that was your life, that's great. And there are some people who do have that. I can only speak from my experience, and my experience was not that case. So as I was navigating, thinking about this particular conversation about Satin, Stain, and Saint, I was really looking at how, in growing up, specifically growing up in the church, I also had another influence about, not making bad choices, not doing things because, anything that you did that was on this list, like this prescribed list, was going to send me to hell. And I don't think that was necessarily something that was thought out by people, like, doing a control thing specifically. I think that people, again, pass down what they've been told to the people underneath them, and then it continues to go on until somebody's like, where does it say that? Like, where is that in the Bible that what you're saying to me? Okay, I appreciate that, but until somebody actually, like, takes a step back. And that doesn't happen in childhood. That was not happening when I was in elementary school. It definitely was not happening in middle school. And I think it just had started for me, like, the thought of, well, why is this? Like, that thought. And oftentimes, even when I thought it, I kept it to myself. I would be like, I don't know that that's right, right? Or I don't know why people feel like that. Or where do people get this from? Like, that thought process, I may have had it, but that was not something that I was sharing with the public. And I'm going to ask you guys another question, because I've let the sweetener do its thing. I'm going to take another sip. But I'm curious for you, when you felt like, looking back, you started thinking for yourself. What time, what age do you think that kicked in for you? Or have you never? Do you feel like people are still consistently influencing everything that you do, as far as the decisions you make, the things that you do, so on and so forth? Yeah, that tea it's good. I'm just trying to, what does never mean? Never means you've never made decisions for yourself. You don't feel like you've made decisions for yourself. Is that what you're saying? I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding what you're writing. You guys know, if I'm drinking this much of the tea, that I actually really like it. Okay. And looking back on that, and thank you, by the way, for your honesty, because some people, would not say something like that, right? But I think that that's a very real thing that many people, and if I'm going to be 100% honest, I feel like there are lots of parts of me that are still very much not wanting to make my own decisions, because when you make your own decision, right, it's yours. There's a part of growing up where you're making your own decisions and then you have to live with your decisions. There's a part of growing up where, you feel like you've been influenced by all these other people making decisions for you, telling you what you can and cannot do, that there's a fallback in that, to be honest with you, because you can be like, well, remember, you told me to do X, Y, and Z, and that's why, my life is the way that it is, right? So there's a part that kind of can fall into that. But when I look back on that, elementary and middle school time period, and I really think about relationships specifically, because I'm in between making decisions in my 30s and still being influenced. And that's real. I honestly feel like if you come from a family that is super opinionated, that, has had a big influence currently, like on your childhood, because there are some kids that are like immediately start making their own decisions. I don't know how that happens, but they do. They come out and they're like, I'm doing my own thing. My mom's not going to control me. My dad's not going to control me. I don't care. I'm doing that's just how they show up in the world. But most of us, I would probably say, fall on that spectrum of what you're talking about. Like, you're in between the space of I'm making decisions for myself and I'm still being influenced by what people are telling me, or how they're telling me or I need to live my life, or guiding my life. Because again, that's not always a bad thing, and I don't truly think intentionally that is always, I believe it depends on the situation. Of course it depends on the situation. I always tell people when, but I am curious, because you're saying it depends on the situation. There's always for people, a general fallback. Like, so people that will say, well, both on many multiple responses, that may be true, and it typically is true. But what is your typical? So by that, do I mean, do you make decisions on your own typically and then maybe consult with people, or do you feel like your normal, your home base, so to speak, is influenced, and then you add, your own thoughts and make your own decisions based on that? And neither is wrong. I want people to understand that neither is wrong, because again, the people that are guiding you, if they're good people, let me stress that, because there are some people who guide you and they're guiding you to make horrible choices, right? So if they're good people, if they truly care about you, if they show up in the world in the same way you want, if they have the same value system, then that's different. If they do not have the same value as you, if they don't believe in the same things that you do as true, if they don't have the same moral fiber that you do and thinking some things should not be done, then that's going to be tricky. And you're right, there are some family members that will never see you as grown up. 100% the truth. They're going to still call you by your little name. Oh, look at little Pookie, look at little so-and-so, right? They're always going to see you that way, even though you're grown and have been grown for many years, right? That's just how they see you. Sometimes that's purposeful, right? But sometimes I feel like people just keep you in, never growing up. They keep you in that like box as, oh, look at little Tiffany, look at little Cheryl, For the longest time, it was funny because, I had graduated from college and people were still asking me, so, how's college? And I was like, I graduated 4 years ago. So I'm just like, where are you at? I graduated 4 years ago, been working in the business world for years, and you're still asking me about how college is. So there are some people that just constantly, they can't see you in the development of who you are. But the thing that I want you to be careful of is that can stunt you, right? If other people are constantly, showing you as, or having you show up as this person that was 15 years old, 10 years old, whatever, right? If you start to buy into that, you then, maybe you would want to make decisions, but you're not, because you feel like, well, what's the point? They're never going to see me as a grown-up. Yeah, you guys are saying how annoying it is. It is annoying. It is annoying for people not to value you or see you as a growing person. But the most important thing is, how do you see yourself? That's the important thing. And, you know, when I was thinking about the satin and the stain and the saint part of this, I really started to think about how God sees us. And, you know, for me, the interesting thing is, you know, there are really two relationships that you're going to have your entire life. One is with yourself, all right? And then the other one is with God. And that's even for the non-believer. That's the relationship they've chosen, but he is still there. He's always there, right? So, you know, the reality of it is you have those two relationships that you're going to navigate your entire life. How do you show up in those relationships, right? Because the funny thing is, and by funny I mean like amazing and sometimes emotional thing about it, is that even when we don't show up for God, right, he still shows up for us. He still is there. He literally took a life that was satin, right, took all the stains that we had and allowed for us to be able to get to saint, to being that. And obviously we're not going to be saints, you know, I don't believe in the sainthood, that I'm not talking about it from that perspective, but be able to live with him, be able to live in a way that we can see him, you know, we can be with him. And imagine that that's the type of relationship that we should be, you know, emulating. There are unfortunately some people who, you know, you start a relationship as satin, right? You kind of see each other for who you are. You, you know, have this beautiful friendship, this beautiful relationship, and then life happens. And then when life happens, right, stains come. Stains come, right? There's no ability to navigate through life without stains, right? It says we're born in sin, which means with a stain, right? To be honest, I have no idea how I see myself. I just stay busy caring for my daughter. And that's real. That is real. And that's actually very touching. And again, I thank you for your vulnerability. I think, and I obviously don't have kids, but I think getting lost in your life is a very real thing. I think it's such a normal thing. And when I look back at my life as a child, and then as a teenager, and then as a young adult, and then me as a middle-aged person now, right? I really look at the context of my life. For a lot of that, if I'm going to be honest, my life lived me. I didn't really I mean, yes, I made choices. Yes, I did things that I found enjoyable. Yes, I had, you know, things that were not enjoyable and things that were hurtful happen in my life. But the reality is I just kept getting older, right? There's a difference between, you know, living your life, and, you know, some people take their life and make it their own and all those things. And there were pieces and components of that. So I don't want you to be like, oh, poor Stacy. But I feel like and again, this is the ability and the blessing of being that age now, and then looking back on those things, I think a lot of the things that I did were based on just, you know, getting up every day and living. Not necessarily getting up every day and making a decision about how I want to show up in the world. Not making a decision about what I wanted for my life. There was a lot of just getting up and going about my day. And I think that, you know, when you kind of, for me, when I look at that reality, sometimes it's sad, but then I also feel like my life is where it's supposed to be now. And that's why I feel like, you know, this saying you guys have probably heard, that youth is wasted on the young. I truly believe that, right? Because my knees are not like they were when I was in my 20s. And, you know, the ability to do things and go and just constantly run and run and run, all that, the ripping and running as they used to call it. I don't have that capability now, but I do have a lot of the wisdom, a lot of the way of seeing things, a lot of the way of showing up that is different. But when, like I was saying, you know, with God, he literally saw and he knew the decisions that we were all going to make. And he still said, okay, you know what? This is who you are. You're Satin. You're going to have a bunch of stains on you, but I'm going to still be here. And, you know, I'm going to change that stain into something different. Right? And that's just through one change, just us saying yes and him restoring that. But I don't think that we do that in relationships. I don't think that we do that for ourselves. And that's why I kept asking, you know, because again, I said the two relationships you're going to have for life are yourself and with God. And where we are able to be forgiven by him, I often don't think that we forgive ourselves for some of the minor choices that we make that have major impact. And I know, looking back, I'm like, perfect example, because the last I left off I was talking about middle school. Let's go to Stacy in high school. Stacy in high school was given the opportunity to go to college and not have to pay a dime. Right? I was blessed. I had, you know, worked really. I was blessed. I was gonna say I worked really hard. There were some classes I had to work hard in, math being one, right? But in any event, I had good grades. I had been involved in lots of things in school, so on and so forth. I had the opportunity to go for free. I did not take up that opportunity. I decided I wanted to go to another school because that was a school where I had seen and they had advertised and I wanted to go. And I'm not negating that that was the path that I took. But again, I was young and dumb. Right? Looking at it now from the perspective I have now, I would never have made that choice. Never. Why? Because then you have to incur debt and you have to incur all the things that come with that. But I was not thinking about that in the moment, right? I was thinking about going to the school that was cool and people were, you know, attending and they had football games. And I thought that that was the best escape for where I wanted to be in life, right? I felt like that was the next journey that I wanted to take. And again, I do believe that even in me making those, God is patient and he's loving and he'll let you make the decisions you make and then you'll have to deal with the repercussions of the decisions you make. But the reality is, excuse me, I made the choice to go to that school. Was it a good choice? It was the choice. You know, I feel like I definitely was able to meet really fantastic people. I have relationships with friends that will last a lifetime from that. That's fantastic. But again, you also paid the other measure. Literally pay the other measure from making those types of choices, because you're making choices not necessarily based on the full range of how it will impact you later, right? Basically, I'm not thinking about how I might be staining my satin for later. I'm thinking about the moment and thinking about, you know, how I want to be in that moment. So it's funny because I was talking about earlier how I, you know, didn't really make a lot of my own choices. That was a choice that I made. My mom, I remember, was like, "You're picking this, but I'm telling you, this is what I can afford to do to support you." But she let me make that choice. It may have been hard for her, and quite frankly, I've never asked her, and maybe I'll have to ask her after this. Was that hard to see me make that choice, knowing that the other choice was better financially for me? But as a parent, letting your child grow and spread their wings and all the things that, you know, parents do, you have to do that. And that's the same thing with God. He sees you and the decisions that you may or may not make and how it may impact you, and he has to, because he gives you free will, let you make those decisions, even though it may literally hurt his heart to see you make those choices. The same thing is true of, and I'm sure oftentimes, because, you know, life for me is all relational. It's all about relationships with people we work with, friendships, relationships with family, relationships with whomever you might be romantically linked with. All of those are so important to us living a life and living a full life. And he sees these relationships, sometimes these friendships that are so toxic and so not healthy. They don't have to be fully toxic, but they're not healthy. They're not building you up, those types of things. And he sees those and has to let us continue to go down that pathway. Many of you, I'm sure, have had relationships, whether they be friendships, work relationships, or romantic relationships, or family relationships that are not healthy. All right? I want you to either give me a thumbs up or say yes if you have some type of relationship right now, currently in your life, that may not be healthy. So for any of you who have that, if not, then, and you could say no. If you don't have any of those, then that's fantastic. I'm like, I will put yes in there. So mine is already logged as a yes. I'm not typing. Really, I'm just doing this. But I do. No. Okay, that's good. Yep, you said. And I think and for you that's saying no, you don't have any relationships that are not healthy. That is fantastic. That means you've done a lot of work to get to a place where the relationships that you have, whether they be with family, people you work with, whomever, romantic relationships, friendships, that are not that all your relationships are healthy. That is fantastic. But that takes work. That takes dedication to you. That takes separation sometimes. And that is hard. That is really hard. I'm waiting to see if everybody responds. But, and you said, yep, you do have some. And that may be very challenging for you. Because what I will say, and when I think about, the difference in, making some of the choices that you do, not really, I eliminated those people. Actually, a couple. You better not be saying me, because I'm here for the long run. So if I'm that person, too bad. But no, I think that relationships are very, very challenging. They're integral to us having a good, full life. I really firmly believe that. But again, the primary relationship that you have to be connected to is yours. Your relationship with yourself. The decisions that you make are your own. And even non-decision. So, people are like, well, I didn't make a decision. I was trying to figure out what you were going to do. That's a decision. Doing nothing is a decision. That's a very real choice. If somebody says, hey, do you want to go out to eat? And they're like, where do you want to go? And you don't respond, and then they pick a place you hate. Guess what? You made the decision by saying nothing. That was your decision. That was your vote, right? And it's the same thing as people who don't vote, right? And I get it that that's all controversial and people don't think the vote matters and blah, blah, blah. But like, if you don't vote, and guess what? And then everything goes down the tubes, and guess what? You're working on eliminating some, still learning family is not always blood. Family is, that is a real statement, because, obviously people will say, and it's funny because, black folks will say, oh, this is my auntie that's not related. This is my cousin. They ain't related either. All sorts of people going to, family reunions that are not related. But I truly believe that what you're talking about is friends being the family that you choose, right? And that is you making a decision for you. That is you saying, you know what? Maybe my whole life I was not able to make those decisions, but now as a grown person, I am able to make those decisions. And maybe the decisions before, were not good ones. Maybe you did allow a few people into your inner circle that were corrupt or nasty or evil or hurtful or petty or vengeful or whatever, right? But now you can say, I don't want that stain. I'm good. I'm good. I know it's only, it may seem and I talked about this at the very beginning, you know, those words having one thing, one minor thing that made a major impact. Removing one toxic person from your life makes a huge impact. It is a huge impact. It literally will say, you know what? Because it sends a message to you about looking at all of your other relationships. You're like, is this one healthy? Because this person can go too. If you get to a point in your life where you finally choose yourself, because, and this is the thing, I know we're trained not to do that. We're trained not to do that because that seems selfish, or that seems self-centered or narcissistic. That is not true. That is not true. You are the one person you're going to be with for your entire life. How about you enjoy you? How about you make you happy? How about you make you healthy? How about you make you whole? Those are the things you need to be thinking about, right? And so even having, you know, one person removed from that one minor thing, it seems minor, but it makes a major impact. That one minor, you know, speaking up for yourself in a job situation where maybe you haven't before, that one minor thing can make a major impact. It may not change the culture of your job, but it may make you feel good about yourself and the fact that you stood up for yourself. Because let me tell you, people tend to be the biggest advocates for everybody except for themselves. The problem with that is this: every single person has a breaking point. If you've ever been around somebody who's typically super quiet, right? And then somebody keeps picking at them, there's a point where that person explodes, right? And you're like, oh, let me move back because the dam has broke. And all sorts of feelings that they've been holding back for years come spilling out, right? And that's a real thing. That's a very real thing. That means you have not been caring for yourself. And again, I do understand that we've been trained to, you know, think that putting you first makes you selfish. We as adults now recognize that there was a lot of things that we might have been told as kids that we have to unlearn and relearn. And that is a big one of them. Because guess what? I can't care for somebody if I'm sick. I can't care for somebody if I'm not whole. I can't care for somebody if I'm not happy. And I can't care about your happiness if I'm miserable. Right? If I'm not whole, happy, and all the things. And that's not selfish. That means I'm changing one minor way that I used to think to have a major impact on the way that I live. I'm about to drive, won't be able to respond. Okay. Get your drive on, girl. But yeah, I think that that's, you know, I think that what people need to do is really start thinking about that. And I get it that that is a minor change, but it's going to have a major impact. And truly, it's actually kind of, if you've been so ingrained, it's been so ingrained in your brain that you're not able to put yourself first, it's going to feel difficult. It's going to feel challenging. And it may make you feel some type of way. It may make you feel a little guilty because you're like, maybe I should, you know, not do this because, you know, what I could do this, and this for somebody else. Maybe I shouldn't go for a walk because, you know, what if I'm not by the phone and so calls me? What if I don't go on a vacation? What if I don't go on a date? What if I don't, you know, find love for myself? What if I don't do all these things, right? But again, those people are doing what they're choosing to do with their life. They're choosing to live how they choose to live, right? You need to worry about the relationship you have with you and all the minor things that you can do in your life that will have major implications, major impact down the line. And so hopefully, you know, this was an interesting topic for me because I had so much in my brain about this topic, and then as I was speaking, you know, I feel like God was trying to tell me, you know, yes, there's a lot that as a person you are going to do for other people because the nature of who you are. If you have a big heart, that's going to be how you show up in the world. That's going to be how you interact. That's going to be how you make the choices that you do. But what I want you to do is remember those two relationships. If you take away nothing from any of the things that I said today, I want you to think about those two relationships. And that's the relationship that you have with yourself and the relationship that you have with God. And like I said, even a non-decision, even if you're in a space where you're like, is God even real? Like, who is this person? Who is God, right? You know, who is this person that everybody keeps talking about, or this thing that people keep talking about, this greater power, this higher power? Who is God? Ask. You know, ask God. You don't have to do it in any specific way. You don't have to make it pretty. If you're in a space where you, one, don't believe, two, have had hurt and think that God wouldn't allow those things, you know, a good God would not allow those things, ask for understanding. Just talk. There doesn't have to be a specific way that you go about doing that, but those are the two relationships that will carry through your life. If you, and what I will also say, for those of you who may watch this later and may think, you know, I don't think I believe, what I will do is challenge you to think about moments in your life where things happen to you that you could not explain. Positive things happen. You know, you received jobs that you didn't think you were qualified for, or you had a report from the doctor, and then all of a sudden you went back and miraculously that thing wasn't there. That doesn't just happen, right? It doesn't just poof out of nowhere. And you know, people say, oh, it's the universe. Well, somebody created the universe, and that's God, right? So when you're thinking about the two relationships with yourself and with God, he's not going anywhere. Even when you get lost in yourself because of some of the choices that you make. And that's why I was asking about some of the choices that we made early on, right? A lot of the choices that we've made, and we don't think it's a big deal when we make it, have lasting impact. Have lasting impact on how others may see you, 100%, but important again, they have lasting impact on how we see ourselves. Did we keep letting people take advantage of us? And we knew it. And we just kept letting it happen. That eats away at how you look at yourself. It's not just about that person. It's about how you feel about yourself in the long term. Do you feel like you were weak? You showed up as weak, and people are treating me that way because of that. And that may be the case, but that doesn't mean you can't make a new choice, a new minor adjustment, change those letters a little bit, and then from changing those letters, you have a major shift, a major change in impact. All right, well, that's all I have for today. It's shorter than usual, I guess. So hopefully that sits with you, and thank you again for all of your support. I appreciate it. I'm going to do some more writing today and sip the rest of this tea because it was really good. Again, you'll see me posting it, but this was the tea if you want to try it out for yourself. If you have any other teas, by the way, that you want me to try, please let me know. Again, no herbal tea because I can't do that. And if there's specifically, if there's an Arizona iced tea that you really, thank you, Tiffany. If there's an Arizona iced tea that you like, let me know because I'm going to try them because obviously they're responsive. So I'm going to try them out and see what's good. But I've typically had the raspberry iced tea, the lemon iced tea. I'm not sure if there's another one. I don't do green tea, so if there's something else, let me know. All right, with that, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and extend to yourself and please to me a measure of grace. Have a great rest of your Saturday, and I will see you next Saturday on Sipping Tea with Stacey T. Bye.